The film begins with two bad guys named Stigman and Bobby, who were planning to steal all the money from the bank. At that time, Bobby goes into the bank, and Stigman goes into the restaurant just across from the bank. A little later, Bobby comes back from the bank to talk to Stigman at the restaurant. Then, they get ready to do their bad stuff. Stigman goes to the bathroom, and then he fakes an emergency to make everyone leave the restaurant. When nobody's around, he casually starts a fire in the restaurant. The scene jumps back to a week earlier. Bobby and Stigman were in Mexico to meet a dangerous gang called the Cartel Mafia. Inside, they met the boss of the gang, Papi Greco. There, Bobby handed over some fake IDs that Papi Greco had asked for earlier. Then, Papi Greco gave Bobby some money, but Bobby wanted drugs instead, like they had agreed before. Papi Greco said he didn't have any drugs left because they had already been given out. So, Bobby took the cash and said he'd wait a few days for the drugs. Later, Bobby told Stigman they needed to leave Mexico right away. But before they could go, Stigman showed off his shooting skills because Papi Greco's men were terrible at shooting. When Bobby and Stigman reached the border between Mexico and America, they got arrested because they were suspected of working with Papi Greco's cartel. They were separated for questioning. It turned out that Bobby was actually an undercover DEA agent, and Stigman had no idea about Bobby's real identity. Soon after, Bobby's boss, Jessup, asked if Bobby had managed to get any evidence against Papi Greco's group. Bobby said no because Papi Greco had paid him in cash this time, so there was no proof to arrest the gang. Then Jessup gave Bobby 2 weeks to find some evidence to help the DEA take down Papi Greco's gang. In another room, Stigman is getting questioned by a DEA agent named Devious, just like Bobby. But instead of getting scared, Stigman tried to charm her. To cut it short, both Bobby and Stigman were eventually let go. A few days later, Bobby went to Stigman's place and asked him to steal all the money that belonged to Papi Greco, which they knew was stored in a bank. Without hesitating, Stigman agreed to Bobby's plan. The next day, before the robbery, they went to the restaurant across from the bank. Stigman set fire to the restaurant so that there wouldn't be any people there tomorrow, just like what happened at the beginning of the film. They were getting ready to carry out their plan the next day. At night, Stigman met a guy named Quince. It turns out Stigman is a Marine working for Quince, who assigned him to catch Papi Greco, the head of the Cartel Mafia. Stigman had also kept his true identity a secret from his friend Bobby, so Bobby and Stigman didn't know each other's real jobs. Now Quince, who is a Marine captain and Stigman's boss, knew about Stigman's plan to rob Papi Greco of his money. He even prepared weapons for the robbery the next day. Before Stigman left, Quince told him to deal with Bobby once they got the money from the heist. Long story short, the date for the robbery came. They told everyone not to fight and do what they said. Stigman went in and set up explosives he had received from Captain Quince the night before. Afterward, they loaded all the money into their car and sped away from the scene. When they reached a quiet spot, people who saw the cash were shocked at how much money there was. But turns out, both of them were planning to kill each other because they thought their partner was a criminal. However, Stigman was a sharpshooter and managed to immobilize Bobby by shooting him in the shoulder. Just as he was about to finish Bobby off, Stigman noticed an ID badge that revealed Bobby was a DEA agent. So Stigman decided not to kill Bobby and chose to leave instead. Meanwhile, a CIA intelligence officer was furious with the bank manager that got robbed earlier because it turns out the CIA had been working with Papi Greco, the head of the Cartel Mafia. On the other hand, Stigman was seen heading to the Marine headquarters to hand over all the money to Quince. When they counted the money, it amounted to a whopping $43 million. Then, Quince asked Stigman if he had taken care of Bobby, but Stigman giving unclear answer. Upon hearing that, Quince wasn't convinced and took Stigman to check Bobby's body. To their surprise, they couldn't find Bobby's body, which meant Bobby had escaped unharmed. Quince then ordered his men to arrest Stigman for disobeying orders, leading to a shootout between them. Luckily, they couldn't kill Stigman, and he managed to escape from the scene. After that, Bobby needed to get his gunshot wound treated at the vet. Later in the evening, Bobby followed Devious, his partner from the DEA, to a hotel. There he tried to explain that he had just robbed a bank, but Stigman had taken the stolen money. Then Bobby asked devious for help in catching Stigman, but she said she was busy and promised to talk later. She also mentioned that people often keep money under their beds. After meeting devious, Bobby was determined to go to Stigman's place alone. While inside, the phone rang, and when Bobby answered it, it was Stigman, who had been watching him from a nearby building. At that time, they still didn't trust each other. Stigman then revealed he was actually a Marine sent by his superiors. However, not long after that, Marines sent by Quince also arrived at Stigman's house, planning to capture him. Realizing this, Stigman helped Bobby escape from his house and even shot some of Quince's men, allowing Bobby to get away safely. On the other hand, Jessup got an unexpected visit from the CIA. The CIA already knew that DEA agents had robbed money from the bank. At the same time, Bobby visited Jessup. At that time, there was a quick shootout when Bobby entered and Jessup got shot. The CIA managed to trap Bobby in this situation. The CIA chief asked Bobby where the stolen money was. To pressure Bobby, the CIA chief used Bobby's own gun to shoot Jessup again. He threatened that if Bobby didn't return the money in a few days, the CIA would blame Bobby for Jessup's death. The next day, Bobby went to Pappy Greco's house to find out whose money he had actually stolen. Soon after, Stigman also arrived, fighting Pappy Greco's men. Stigman then kidnapped Pappy Greco, and Bobby tried to chase him. They even had a fight at one point. Eventually, they both got tired and decided to work together and trust each other. Soon after, Stigman revealed that his Marine superior, Quince, was now after him. Meanwhile, Bobby mentioned that his boss had been killed by a group of people, and they would frame him for it. Afterward, they brought Pappy Greco to a spot for questioning. They found out that the people who killed Bobby's boss were actually the CIA. It turned out that all the money they stole was actually bribe money from the cartel to the CIA, which meant it belonged to the CIA. Shortly after, they were surprised when devious arrived there. It turned out that the place Bobby and Stigman used was Devries's house. Inside, devious was upset with Bobby because she didn't want to get involved with the dangerous cartel mafia, which could put her safety at risk. However, he tried to reassure her that everything would be okay. On the other hand, while Stigman checked on Pappy Greco, they were suddenly approached by Marines from Quince's team. Luckily, they managed to escape by running away from the place. Meanwhile, Pappy Greco managed to escape and hijacked a passing car. He quickly contacted his men to capture Bobby and Stigman. In the middle of the night, the car driven by Bobby got hit by Pappy Greco's men. Bobby and Stigman were captured, but devious managed to disappear during the collision. The next day, Bobby and Stigman were seen being tortured by Pappy Greco for daring to kidnap him. Then, Bobby offered to give Pappy Greco the stolen money to secure their release, even though he didn't know where the money was. Pappy Greco, wanting the money, agreed to let them go. However, they found out that devious had been captured by Pappy Greco's group. Pappy Greco warned that if Bobby and Stigman didn't bring the money within 24 hours, he would harm devious. Once they got away, Stigman revealed that the money was with Quince, his boss, very likely still at a Marine base. They stole one of the parked cars and headed off. The next day, Stigman took Bobby to see an old friend who could help them buy weapons because they needed to get the money before nightfall. They were determined to get into the Marine base. On the way, Bobby went to Quince's office, while Stigman planned to report Quince's crimes to the top admiral. When they arrived at the admiral's place, Stigman tried to explain everything. However, the admiral didn't want to get involved because it would harm the Navy's reputation. The admiral even kicked Stigman out and was going to fire him. On the other hand, Bobby finally confronted Quince and pressured him to reveal where the stolen money was. Under pressure, Quince admitted that all the money was with devious because Quince was actually her boyfriend. They had intentionally trapped Stigman and Bobby. Soon after, Quince's men arrived and caught them, followed by the Marines who wanted to arrest Bobby. To escape, Bobby decided to disguise himself as a Marine by putting on one of their uniforms. His plan was to cause an explosion to divert their attention, and it worked. Finally, he managed to get away from the base. In the evening, while Bobby was on the move, he got a call from Papi Greco. At that time, Papi Greco told Bobby that time was running out for him and Stigman, and he was going to kill Deb Reese. After Deb Reese was killed, Bobby was in a tough spot because she was the only one who knew where the money was hidden. Long story short, that same night, Bobby and Stigman met again. Stigman planned to go back to Mexico to create a conflict between Papi Greco's group and Quince's troops, while Bobby would try to track down the money's location. Afterward, Bobby remembered what Deb Reese had said about people often keeping money under their beds. When he checked under Deb Reese's bed, he found all the money. The next day in Mexico, Stigman pretended to hand over the stolen money to Papi Greco. However, Quince's troops were also there and started shooting at Papi Greco's men. It turned out Stigman's plan was to spark a conflict between Papi Greco's group and Quince's group. Soon after, the CIA showed up, and Bobby had actually called them. Bobby had all the money in a car, and he handed the car keys to the CIA boss. While Bobby and Stigman were trying to leave, a shootout happened. At that time, Bobby and Stigman tried to escape and ended up facing Quince and the CIA boss with guns pointed at each other. However, with their teamwork, they managed to take down Quince and the CIA boss by shooting at them simultaneously. Then they approached Papi Greco, who was defenseless, and without hesitation, they took him down too. Long story short, Bobby and Stigman were spotted at the restaurant they had burned down earlier. Stigman looked at the bank across the street and suggested they rob it because they were broke. However, Bobby revealed that he hadn't lost all the money. He had actually saved some money at his house, enough to have a good time for the rest of their lives. He also planned to share some of his money with the owner of the restaurant they had previously burned down. The film ends. The moral lesson learned from this film is when life gets crazy, always check under your bed for hidden treasures, and don't forget to make amends with the restaurant owner you accidentally set on fire.